Hello guys, this is Saruto Uchiha Storm here and welcome to my channel. Today I am doing What If Naruto Was the Black Dragon Emperor. Please like and subscribe to my channel. Chapter 24 Preparing the Return Trip Part 1, Outskirts of Konoha. Naruto appeared in the middle of the forest on the outskirts of his old home, and right in front of him there was a rather cozy little wooden cabin, which was one of the cabins that he had saved in parchments so as not to have to spend chakra building one with the Omniadon. He just walked towards her, and when he opened the door he saw a somewhat strange scene because Kaguya Otsutsuki sitting in a wheelchair while strangling one of her clones. Kaguya, how dare you feed me a little bastard rabbit, she said quite angry as she swayed the poor clone from side to side. Clone, you asked me to bring you something to eat and that was the first thing I found, he said while his eyes turned into spirals. Also, I didn't see you complain when I gave it to you, he said with a trembling voice due to dizziness before dissipating. Kaguya, don't run away from my cowardly clone, she said with an angry look before hearing a fake cough. Finally, you come back, Ashura, she said with a calm voice as if nothing had happened. I see you managed to beat those two, she said as she went back to eating, although with a little disgust on her face. Naruto, yes, I got it and I'm sorry for the delay, but my classmates decided to have a celebration, he said, and then walked towards a shelf with some books and took one that was totally blank. Listen, I know that you and I didn't start very well 15 years ago, but I know I can't leave you here, so I'll ask just once, he said as he sat down in front of her. Will you come with me? Or do you prefer to stay in the cell of one of the hidden villages? It's your decision, you have until tomorrow night to decide, he said, and then he opened the book. Then he raised an ink bottle and a brush and began to write several stamps at a great speed and also turned the pages while the Otsutsuki woman only looked at him a lot, amazed at how many stamps she could write on a single page at such speed. Kaguya, what are you doing, she asked before noticing that the table was surrounded by 9 small bijus who just looked at her calmly. Does it has something to do with them? Outskirts of Konoha. Naruto appeared in the middle of the forest on the outskirts of his old home, and right in front of him there was a rather cozy little wooden cabin, which was one of the cabins that he had saved in parchments so as not to have to spend chakra building one with the Omniadon. He just walked towards her, and when he opened the door he saw a somewhat strange scene because Kaguya Otsutsuki sitting in a wheelchair while strangling one of her clones. Kaguya, how dare you feed me a little bastard rabbit, she said quite angry as she swayed the poor clone from side to side. Clone, you asked me to bring you something to eat and that was the first thing I found, he said while his eyes turned into spirals. Also, I didn't see you complain when I gave it to you, he said with a trembling voice due to dizziness before dissipating. Kaguya, don't run away from you cowardly clone, she said with an angry look before hearing a fake cough. Finally, you come back, Ashura, she said with a calm voice as if nothing had happened. I see you managed to beat those two, she said as she went back to eating, although with a little disgust on her face. Naruto, yes, I got it and I'm sorry for the delay, but my classmates decided to have a celebration, he said, and then walked towards a shelf with some books and took one that was totally blank. Listen, I know that you and I didn't start very well 15 years ago, but I know I can't leave you here, so I'll ask just once, he said as he sat down in front of her. Will you come with me? Or do you prefer to stay in the cell of one of the hidden villages? It's your decision, you have until tomorrow night to decide, he said, and then he opened the book. Then he raised an ink bottle and a brush and began to write several stamps at a great speed and also turned the pages while the Otsutsuki woman only looked at him a lot, amazed at how many stamps she could write on a single page at such speed. Kaguya, what are you doing, she asked before noticing that the table was surrounded by 9 small bijus who just looked at her calmly. Does it has something to do with them? Naruto, I'll explain it to you when I'm done, he said as he continued writing the seals. Shukaku, you take Kaguya to her room, tomorrow will be a very long day, he said, to which the biju only accepted and then used his sand to carry the goddess rabbit and take her to her room. You guys rest too, when this is over you will have a safe place just for you, he said with a smile. Matabi, don't overdo it, puppy, today you had a good fight, maybe you should rest too, she said, a little worried about the young man who saved them twice. Saiken, my sister is right, Naruto, you have to rest too, she said, but she only saw how the blonde smiled at her. Gyuki, let him go guys, he knows what he's doing, he said, and then he and the rest of the bijus go to different points of the cabin and lie down to sleep. Kurama, you know they're right, you've been awake all day and you haven't rested a bit, he said seriously as she watched as Naruto continued making the seals. Naruto, quiet friend, I'll just finish this and go to sleep a little, he said to his tenant before getting lost again in his world of seals and ignoring everything else without listening to the exasperation of his 2 tenants. Zarko, I don't know why you bother trying to stop him, the dragon said to his fox companion when he starts with that fuinjutsu. It's like talking to a stone, he said as he lays down to sleep. You better sleep, he said before sleeping. Kurama, maybe you're right, he said as he lay down to sleep too. I wonder how the Gremory are doing. Well, at least Naruto left a scroll with clones for the girls so they wouldn't lose their training asterisk, he said, and then closed his eyes and fall into a deep sleep. Around midnight Naruto finished all the seals in the book and went to sleep in one of the rooms. In Dimension DXD, in the dimension of the demons, 5 days have passed since the blonde Uzumaki left through that portal, and things have gotten a bit awkward between the blonde's friends and the Gremory, because 2 days ago Rias informed everyone that she got 2 weeks more time thanks to giving information about what happened on the day of Naruto's departure to the underworld, and asked everyone to continue with the training imposed by Naruto. The fallen angels felt uncomfortable with the fact that the Razor was in the mansion and that Rias had spoken alone with him. Asia also felt very uncomfortable because she, distrusting Rias, her piece of evil caused her a little damage, and that was not all because Issei had been asking for help with a supposed super attack that he had invented, but he was always rejected. Currently the three are in Naruto's seal hut with a new addition, Kaneko, who said that lately the atmosphere in the mansion was very tense and did not feel comfortable. Asia, girls, what do you think happened to Naruto? Asked the worried young woman. She should have already returned, and the truth is I don't feel very comfortable without him here, she said when she suddenly shivered from a small pulse of magic that hurt her body. Calawarner, calm down Asia-chan, he'll be back, she said as she took the girl's hand, and you must stop having thoughts against the Gremory or you'll hurt yourself more, she said a little worried. Asia, but I can't help it, she said as she stood up. Issei is a perverted idiot. Kiba just acts like vengeful and arrogant emo, and for 2 days Rias have given me a feeling of discomfort and distrust, and Kaneko proves that he's not. I'm the only one, she said pointing to the little girl. Rainer, tell us Kaneko, what do you think about what is happening with your king, she said seriously. Since Razor was here he has not spoken to us and refused to allow one of the Naruto clones to supervise his training and that of Akano, as well as Issei and Kibashi, said remembering how that group of demons would not want to receive the guidance of the clones that Naruto left them. Kaneko, I'm not really sure, she said with his typical seriousness, but I know that the president imposed on Akano not to receive guidance from the clones of Naruto-senpai since she and I do want to continue training with clones because he knows how to train our flaws, she said, to which the others agreed also and noticed that Akano-san looks at Rias with sadness and disapproval. That's something I had never seen in the time I've been with them, she said, confusing everyone present. Rainer, I don't know, but I think something else happened in the meeting of Rias and that bird, she said seriously. I hope things don't get out of control, but for now we only have to rest. Tomorrow we must continue with our training, she said, so that later everyone to sleep with thoughts about things that might happen in the near future. Elementary dimension. We see how Naruto just got up 15 minutes ago after sleeping until 11 a.m. because he woke up the night before. At this moment he is finishing getting ready for the meeting with his ex-companions and verifying what happened with the Inuzuka clan. Kaguya, I see you're ready now, said the Otsutsuki woman who was sitting in her wheelchair. The only difference was that her dress had been repaired and her wounds healed, for which she had that nobility posture that she always had, but without her horns. I know I have to be watched because of what happened to us 15 years ago, she said calmly, but why should I go with you to this meeting? Wouldn't it be better to just leave me with several clones? It's not like she can defend or oppose me either, remember? She said as she pointed at her head devoid of any trace of her horns. Gyuki, because yesterday one of the clones of Naruto received the request to take you to the meeting so that they could see with their own eyes if you are a danger or not, said the Biju while he and her brothers sat next to her in Naruto. Matabi, you also have to be there to give your answer to Naruto about whether or not you will go with him, said the fire cat while she played with her nails. Naruto, they have a point, he said as he tied his headband around his right arm. Don't worry, they won't do anything to you while this one is there, he said, and then went behind her, and then they all disappeared in a flash of black and red. Hokage Tower, outside the Hokage's office. Naruto and his companions appeared outside the office that belonged to the village leader. Naruto noticed how Kaguya seemed dizzy after the use of the Hiraishin, but her pride made her regain her composure immediately. Naruto, well, it seems that everyone is waiting for us, he said calmly since he felt the presence of his friends inside the room, although there are also 4 others that I don't recognize, and hidden in the ceiling there are several Anbu, he said while asking Naruto Shukaku to open the door, which the Biju only lazily accepted and opened, giving way to the blonde and them. Hello everyone, he said, greeting the people around him. When the blonde entered, the expressions were immediate because they all saw the invalid Kaguya Otsutsuki surprised. None of them could believe that a being of such power could end up in such a state. Although Naruto only let his companions look at the ancient goddess rabbit, he focused on the people he did not recognize before entering and was surprised to see Sume and Hana Inuzuka, who had a dull look full of disappointment, and finally he saw two old men who made his eyes crinkle in irritation. They were Koharu and Hamura, which looked like raisins in human form. Sakura, well, as you can see, Naruto was right and we no longer have to worry about Kaguya, said the young Hokage, who came out of her surprise before the others. Now we can start this meeting where the current status of the clan will be announced. Inuzuka, along with the decision to plow with the rabbit goddess and the bijus, she said, to which everyone nodded in agreement. Shikamaru, give me a report what happened in the Inuzuka clan. Shikamaru, hi Hokage-sama, he said seriously as he took out some documents from inside his vest. Last night the Inuzuka clan, made up of a total of 343 members not counting their canine companions, was subjugated by order of the present Rokudame Hokage Naruto Uzumaki after of the confession of the clan leader Kiba Inuzuka, who conspired against the village and committed crimes such as rape, attempted murder against civilians and fellow shinobi, and the near murder of the current Hokage Sakura. Haruno, said the Nara while looking at all the present, who gave their full attention but also noticed how the two Inuzuka present in the room lowered their heads more and more with each crime their son, brother was accused of. The current count after the census done by Anbu gives a number of 102 Inuzuka still alive, all of whom are children and women, which indicates that a total of 70% were eradicated for being part of the plans of their former leader. He said with a serious total truth in his voice, because I never expected something like the Uchiha incident to happen again. Sakura, as you can see, what happened last night was not just a simple outburst of power from our 6th Hokage Sume-san. Hana-san, said the Hokage at the two Inuzuka who were representing their clan in this meeting. Saida, your report on what you found in Kiba's house. Sai, hi, he said firmly. Under the home of Inuzuka Kiba, a basement was found where he presumably had meetings with several members of the clan, he said, showing photographs of the place. In the place there were maps of Konoha, both the city and the sewerage were marked in key places, and there were files with different plans to take control of the village within 6 months, he said seriously. Also found a notebook with a list of all the women Kiba extorted and planned to take in the short term. Among them there were many of the women present here, including his mother and his sister, he said, and everyone gasped in total disgust at what they heard. His plan was supported by all the men of the clan, and they had the objective of taking the village and turn women into objects of pure sexual pleasure, while men would be the military force, he said seriously. That's all he found thanks to the clones of the 6th Hokage, he said, and everyone was. They were totally silent. Even Kaguya seemed disturbed by this information. Karui, I can't believe I managed to hide all that for so long, said the matriarch of the Akamichi clan. That damn thing could have hurt my daughter, she said, and then sighed, trying to calm her growing anger, but she calmed down completely when her husband took his hand. Choji, the good thing is that none of that happened and it was stopped by Naruto, she said with a small bow to the blonde. Although I admit that as a ninja it seems that several of us have rusted, she said seriously, to which they all nodded in agreement. Gara, is what these times of peace managed to do to us, said the only Kage from another village that was still in Konoha. We have weakened. Tenten, you're right, we must regain our strength and improve the new generation so that the same thing that happened to us doesn't happen to them, she said, and they all nodded in agreement. Ino, on the other hand, I investigated the surviving women and discovered that several women from the clan were also involved and were also killed because apparently, they sold their daughters to the men of the clan in order to save them, she said seriously after questioning the women. Girls discovered that many of the Inuzuka had very strong mental problems linked to their wild side, as they call it. This is what made them act like a pack of wolves instead of like humans. Therefore, with the approval of the Hokage, a program was started specially to help survivors with this disorder and help children overcome the trauma of the loss of their clan, said his report with total professionalism. Sakura, well done Ino, I want you to start next week, he said, to which Ino nodded. As you can see, Sume-san, now it has been made clear that his clan for a moment was a danger to the village, but you can't blame everyone for that. You must take the mantle of leader once again and guide your clan to a new start in the village, he said, to which Sume nodded. Sume, I will do it Hokage-sama, he said with determination. I and my daughter will take care that everything goes back to normal. We will also make sure that all the members attend the programs explained by the young Yamanaka, he said, bowing. And yes, it's no use, I'm sorry for what my son did to him, he said, and then left with tears in his eyes, accompanied by his daughter, who only remained silent, but they were stopped by Naruto's voice. Naruto, and for what it's worth I'm sorry for what I did to his family, Sume-san said, bowing. Maybe I got too carried away, but it doesn't change the fact that I still think this was the right thing to do even if I had to kill one of my ex-colleagues, said while looking into her eyes. Sume, you shouldn't apologize for anything, Naruto. What happened to Kiba was because he earned it, she said sadly, but he looked kindly at the blonde. You've matured, cub, I can see it in your eyes, and I'm sure you would have been an excellent Hokage active, she said, and then turned around and left the place. Hana, I apologize to everyone for my brother's attitude and actions, especially with you, Hinata. Sakura, she said seriously, looking at the two most affected in this whole case. I can't say I understand how you feel because I never passed for something like that, but I hope you can forgive my family for my brother's mistake, she said as she lay down on the floor and got into a praying position. I beg you, please forgive me, she said while crying. If only I had taken command of the clan, maybe this would never have happened, she said, but suddenly someone grabbed her shoulder, forcing her to look up into Hinata's eyes. Hinata, you're not to blame for anything, Hana said, the young ex-Inuzuka. Everything was your brother's fault and we don't hold a grudge against your family or your mother, she said when suddenly a very surprised Iruka entered the room with a little chestnut in her arms. Iruka, Hana-chan listens to what happened and he said, but he was stunned to see his beloved on her knees crying and all his former students gathered around him, but his shock was even greater when he saw a blonde teenager because he had only heard rumors. Naruto, he said with his voice like a whisper. Naruto, go, Iruka-sensei, where were you yesterday, said the blonde with a small smile. The truth was waiting for you at my party yesterday, he said, taking Iruka out of shock. Iruka, I was on a mission outside the village and I was on my way when I got a message from Azumo and Kotetsu about what happened to the clan. I came to see my wife and my son, he said, still a little stunned while he helped Hana to her feet as she hugged him tightly. Naruto, what if we talk later, Iruka-sensei, he said calmly. Is that now we are in something a little important, he said, and the Junin nodded. Iruka, sure, we'll talk later, he said, and then went out with his wife and son, leaving everyone at the meeting. Shino, well, maybe we should continue with the meeting and see the next points to discuss, he said, and everyone agreed. Sakura, well, the next point is about what will Naruto do with the bijus and the rabbit goddess, she said, to which everyone looked expectantly at the blonde, who just sighed and was about to speak but was interrupted by a decrepit and feminine voice. Kaharu, I hope you got that stupid idea of leaving out of your head, the old council mummy said seriously, because we can't miss this opportunity, she said, confusing everyone. Naruto, and what would be that opportunity you speak of, he said while she leaned on the back of Kaguya's wheelchair. Or great and honorable counselor, he said with a mocking tone, and they all saw how Matabi climbed on her head. Sakura, I don't remember asking you two mummies for advice, said Sakura with an attitude that made Naruto remember Tsunade. Homura, we don't need your permission to give our opinion, Lady Haruno, he said seriously. The law allows us to make our opinion known when it comes to something that benefits the village, he said stoically while everyone in the room looked at him as if already was in a coffin, because Sakura was already on her feet and her fists were ready to knock the elders out of the room in one fell swoop. Lee, these old men are not young at all, he said with boredom. Tenten, they're idiots, darling. Don't worry, said the young weapons specialist. Let's just hope his death is quick, but with great pain, she said, and they all closed their eyes begging for that act. Ino, I'll prepare the funeral flowers, she said as she took out a notebook and made notes. Choji, darling, let's prepare the food, he said, to which Karui nodded enthusiastically because she loved her husband's food. Karui, of course, darling, counts me in, she said while she smiled. Shikamaru, I think I'll do the farewell speech, he said with annoyance. Tamari, I'll help you, she said with a satisfied smile as Sakura slowly walked towards the elders. Hanabi, Konohamaru should ask the cemetery to prepare 2 tombstones next to your grandfather's, she said mockingly. Konohamaru, you're right, I'll tell Udon and Moegui that their grandparents died like fools, he said, so that later everyone burst out laughing, including Kaguya, for the plans of an impromptu funeral except Shino and Sai, who were always very stoic. Sakura, well, you heard today, the day has come for you, she said, ready to kill them for real, but her hand was stopped by Naruto, who was wiping a tear after hearing the nonsense of her friends. Naruto, haha, calm down, Sakura, he said with a smile, let they talk, and if they're too stupid you can kill them, he said, to which the pink-haired girl only snorted, still angry, but decided to pay attention to the blonde. Okay, talk quickly, he said, looking at the elders that although they seemed stoics he could feel her fear. Kaharu, you can't leave, you are the last male member of the Uzumaki and Namikaze clan, he said seriously. In addition to a powerful Jinchuriki with a new type of energy which we don't know and could be inherited by your offspring, he said, and then looked at Kaguya. Also thanks to you, we have in our custody the cause of the fourth ninja war. One think that as compensation he gives us heirs of his powerful blood, and what better partner than our strongest ninja. She may be disabled but she can still have powerful children, he said with complete confidence in his words. Homura, besides that, look at you, you have the confidence of the 10-tailed beasts. We can give each one a host and be the most powerful village of all with powerful Jinchuriki and a generation of Uzumaki, Otsutsuki, she said with the same confidence as her partner. Sakura, you stop disgusting mummies, she said, getting ready to kill them right there, but suddenly the heads of the elders fell to the ground without spilling blood because the wound was cauterized, and everyone saw Naruto, who had an imbued sword in his hand in a blue fire with black. Naruto, I hate unpleasant beings like you, he said as his sword returned to the form of a leather handle. Now let's continue with this meeting, he said, and everyone nodded in agreement. DXD dimension. In the dimension of the demons, things have happened with certain normality in training. Although 2.5 days have passed since Kaniko's discussion with the Datenchi in Asia, things have improved a bit because of Kiba once again asked for the guidance of the demons. Clones of Naruto. Although it was noticeable that it was only because he had stalled in his personal training, Akeno also asked again for the help of the clones and Rias had no choice but to accept, and on the other hand, Issei only asked for the help of a clone to complete his technique, but after a single day, the clone returned and dissipated, saying that they would not call him again to train Issei, and the pervert returned that same night with both black eyes and a broken arm which he had to heal, but for the rest things with the training are going better than ever. In a meadow, we see a clone of Naruto who is standing while making some notes in a notebook where he wrote down about the training he was in right now, although he had to stop when suddenly hundreds of black feathers shot out of the forest at around him which seemed very sharp. The clone jumped high to dodge the projectiles only to turn around in the air and block a blow from Kaniko, who had jumped high from the top of a tree to intercept him in the air. The clone grabbed the arm of the white-haired woman and in a mid-air turn threw her against the ground, but she, in a display of great agility, repositioned herself to land on her feet as if she were a cat. The clone landed on the meadow while watching Kaniko, who lunged at him at a pretty good speed. That was better than when the training started. The white-haired girl jumped in the air while turning to give a downward heel kick which the clone dodged by moving his body to one side, letting the attack hit the ground next to him, generating a small crater under his feet. But it didn't finish there, since the little girl in a quick movement stood up, giving a turn using the impulse to give a blow to the chest of the clone, which blocked it with his right hand, while from the left he took out a kunai with which he was about to cut her, but she stepped back so as not to be hurt by the weapon. But when he was ready, he plows attacking again. He heard a sharp wind sound forcing him to jump to dodge a demonic wind shuriken which passed under him, but this did not seem to bother him as he smiled a little before make a quick turn in the air and grab the big throwing weapon right by the center ring, and before falling on the ground I throw it back to a tree which was split, forcing the person who threw the weapon to jump from the branch in the one that was hiding. When he looked up he saw Asia, who was looking at him with determination before throwing several shurikens at him which he deflected with another kunai that came out of his right sleeve as he took a few steps back, but while deflecting the shurikens Kaniko tried to attack him by behind, but the clone only moved his body to the side to use the kunai of his left hand to block the blow of the girl, who did not suffer damage since she had put on her metal knuckle gloves. When she finished blocking Asia's shurikens he turned to start a fight with the little girl, in which each blow of the girl generated small sparks when making contact with her kunai, so they were for a couple of minutes, where the clone noticed that the Kaniko's blows had become a little faster and stronger since the beginning of the training, and he was sure that he still had the gravity and resistance seals, which was an indicator that the training was being very fruitful, but he left that thought for later when in a quick movement he deflected 2 blows from the girl and then crouched down to sweep her feet, which she jumped and with great agility made a strong turn in the air to give power to a kick that was directed at her head. He crouched down waiting for his opponent to fall to the ground in front of him. He took advantage of the moment because due to his spin in the air Kaniko fell so that he was turning his back on him. He quickly stood up and took her by the hands to put both arms of the girl on her back, managing to subdue her. Then she turned 180 degrees and used the albino as a shield from a kick from Asia, which made Kaniko twist forward as she lost air in her lungs. It is quickly the clone threw her to the side with enough force making the girl roll on the ground about 4 meters. Then he returned to focus his attention on the Italian blonde who was about to hit him in the jaw, but he quickly deflected it and I throw a right hand at her which she blocks with her left forearm and then I grab her arm to pull it towards her and in trying to knee him in the abdomen but he deflected it with his own knee. Seeing this the ex-nun grabbed her knife which was on the right side of her waist and tried to cut her chest but the clone grabbed her wrist before she slashed at him and using the same technique as her, he pulled her towards him and headbutted her back while holding her head which gave her the opportunity to lunge at her and kick her which she barely managed. Block with her arms in X of hers but still, she was thrown back due to the force of her kick leaving her on the ground as she writhed a bit on the ground in pain. Clone N. Wow, today they are taking it seriously, he thought while looking at both girls knocked down who only moved complaining of pain or fatigue. Kaniko's strength has been growing slowly as well as his speed, although he is still using the seals so he still does not give it his all in this fight. His taijutsu has also improved a lot thanks to his renewed natural agility, he thought looking at the girl who stood up slowly. On the other hand, Asia has shown that not only his speed and strength have been perceived, but he has also improved a lot in taijutsu, being able to parry some of my attacks and also decided to focus on the use of weapons to fix his disadvantage of not having a magic attack skill, although that it is because he has not yet learned more advanced attack spells. I must say that he should stop postponing that training, he will not be able to defend himself completely from the razor pieces, he thought seeing the blonde who sat down little by little. They are doing well, girls both have improved a lot, she said and saw how they looked at him without saying anything. Asia, although I'm getting better I still can't hit it and this is just a clone, the girl thought as she stood up and took her knife in reverse as if it were a kunai and from a case, on her waist, she took out several shurikens. I have to defeat him if I want to impress the real Naruto, she said while giving a small look to Kaniko who nodded and began to make some signs with his hands. Don't trust yourself because today we will defeat you, she said calling the attention of the clone who looked at her with a smile. Clone N. That remains to be seen, he said while making a single hand seal, sweetened penetrating water bullet, he said and then looked at Kaniko and the water bullet came out of his mouth at high speeds that was heading towards her but she barely managed to finish her seals in time. Kaniko, Kaden fireball, she said while spitting a fireball the size of his torso which managed to evaporate the water and generate a small cloud of steam. Hell, it's still not powerful enough, she thought while he breathed with strength. My reserves are still not big enough and I get tired very easily, I thought as I slowly caught my breath, but that's my fault after all, I refused to use it all my life and now I realize my mistake, she thought before preparing for close combat. But this time he released the weight and gravity seals and covered his fists with concentrated demonic magic energy giving his gloves a red glow. Luckily my devil magic control has improved enough to enhance my blows, she thought with determination before jumping against the cloud of vapor to give a surprise blow to his clone master who used his arms in the form of X to block his blow which when impact generated a crater under the feet of and the clone and she noticed how he stepped back a few inches but not satisfied with that she kicked his chest now with increased strength and speed due to the lack of the seals but still the clone was too fast and jumped back to dodge forcing her to fall to the ground. Clone N. It was a good technique but it still needs more speed, he said as he fell and prepared some shurikens to throw them against Kaniko but he preferred to throw them to the left to deflect the ones that Asia threw at him. Good way to take advantage of my moment of distraction but you need to do it at the exact moment and not allow your opponent to prepare, he said as he looked at the blonde who smiled a little arrogantly at him which confused him but his confusion changed to seriousness when he heard a fluttering sound that came from his right. Damn, he said before turning and with his right hand, he stopped a blow made by a large hammer made of purple corrupted sacred energy which made him go back 2 meters before he stopped in his tracks by putting chakra in his feet to then look at your attacker Rainer. Rainer, hello Clone-san, she said with a smile. Although you could see the effort to continue pushing his energy weapon, you shouldn't forget about us so easily, she said, so that then the hammer disintegrated and a sword of light appeared in his hand. I tried to cut him in half horizontally with my right hand but the clone raised a boken from one of the seals on his right arm and blocked his demon attack. The clone stared at Rainer while she tried to cut him again but this was diagonally. He deflected his lightsaber to the left and then jumped back to avoid Kaniko who tried to kick him from above and when he hit the ground created a large crater almost 5 meters wide and 1 meter deep which also forced Rainer to fly a little with his wings. Then he stopped with his left hand a punch from behind that came from Asia. Then he turned quickly and with his boken he hit her in the leg forcing her to fall on one knee to then block Rainer's sword which came from above but he saw Kaniko run towards him with her fist ready to hit his right side so he grabbed. She used Asia's hand with force and as if it were a hammer she used it to hit Kaniko sending the two to fly several meters. Then with her left palm she punched upwards hitting Rainer's abdomen sending her skyward with brute force. The clone watched as the Detenchi flew a couple of meters before using his wings to stop his ascent and then steadied himself a bit while wincing. He was about to give his observations about their teamwork until his senses warned him of the danger, so he quickly took out a second boken and with a perfect reaction he deflected 100 small-sized spears of golden light and then jumped back 5 times, avoiding being impaled by 5 purple human-sized spears. The clone looked up to the sky. The clone watched as the Detenchi flew a couple of meters before using his wings to stop his ascent and then steadied himself a bit while wincing. He was about to give his observations about their teamwork until his senses they warned him of the danger, so he quickly took out a second boken and with a perfect reaction he deflected 100 small-sized spears of golden light and then jumped back 5 times, avoiding being impaled by 5 purple human-sized spears. The clone looked up at the sky where she saw Rainier, who prepared a barrage of small purple spears of light, but she was not alone, as Kalawarner was with her, making her own small spears of light, making it look like there were around 400 of them. Rainier, Kalawarner, Rain of Corrupted Light, said both, so that then all the spears were fired at the clone, who began to run while the spears fell to try to impale him, but he was faster and managed to deflect or dodge them before that touch it. The clone ran while avoiding the spears until he reached a tree, which he used as an impulse to launch himself towards the 2 Detenchi in the air, which upon seeing him stopped throwing their spears and then creating a sword, each one ready to cut the clone in the air, but the clone found them when he launched one of his boken towards them, which he simply evaded, letting it pass him without any problem. The clone only smiled and then used chakra futon to propel himself towards Kalawarner, who prepared to cut him, but the clone deflected his attack with the bogen he had left, which generated a small battle of swords in the air, which did not last long because the blue-haired Detenchi was distracted by hearing Rainier give a groan of pain and then shoot out at him ground. This surprising Kalawarner, who took a quick look at her surroundings only to see another clone of Naruto floating in the air just where her partner was before, but her surprise became greater when she saw him. The clone slowly transformed into the other boken that the clone she was fighting against she threw at them earlier. Clone N. The wooden clones are very useful, don't you think so? He said, taking advantage of Kalawarner's distraction to break his sword of light with a single blow with his boken and then kick it in the abdomen, throwing it against the ground. Now what if we finish with this? He asked as he attracted his clone turned into a boken and fell in the middle of the 4 girls, who looked at him with determination. Show me what you are capable of, he said as he grabbed his 2 boken with force. The 4 girls looked at each other before nodding and then looking at their target, who looked at them with an amused smile that told them that he was waiting for them. Seeing this, Asia was the first to act, throwing several shurikens which the clone deflected with his swords to then take a big turn and kick Kaneko in the head, but she manages to stop him with her arm without moving an inch because she used her chakra to stick to the ground. Then she grabbed the clone's leg with her 2 hands to prevent what she was moving. He gave the 2 Detenchi the chance to attack. Kalawarner created a light sword while Rainier created a hammer. They launched themselves to deal the final blow, but the clone used the boken to stop the 2 light weapons and then gave a small jump with his free foot and then give Kaneko a quick kick to the face, which released his other leg, allowing him to regain his balance. When both legs hit the ground, a pair of wooden hands come out on the ground, hitting the 2 Detenchi in the jaw, moving them away from him and incidentally forcing them to cancel their light weapons. Then he nailed the boken on the ground and with his parries a couple of kicks that will come from the 2 demon hands of the group. Then they started to spin on its axis to make them both dizzy, but was surprised when they raised their hands and pointed at his head. Asia's Kaneko, bullet, said the 2 at the same time when a magic circle of the Gremory clan was formed in their hands, and then each one shot a bullet-shaped projectile made of pure magic which went directly to the clone's head, which forced him to release them, which sent them flying several meters due to the impulse given by all the turns they gave. But even so, a small explosion was generated where the clone was. Asia, did it work? Asked the blonde as she stood up and looked at Kaneko, who was also standing up, and then saw the 2 Detenchi standing next to them. I couldn't see if we hit her when she threw us, she said seriously. Rainier, don't worry Asia-chan, let's just make sure, she said, so that they all nodded and got ready. First me and Kalawarner will do it, she said, and so the 2 Detenchi with a single movement of their wings launched hundreds of very sharp feathers which impacted in the place where the clone was supposed to be, and then they looked at Asia and Kaneko. His turn, said, to which the 2 demons only nodded and then both fired several magic bullets which hit their target with force. Kalawarner, that should have finished it, she said while letting out a deep sigh which made her shudder a little because of all the pain in her body every time these insights are more intense, she said seriously while rubbing her head. I feel like I'm going to fall apart at any moment, she said before sitting down on the ground exhausted. Kaneko, I agree, she said as she lay down next to the others. I can't believe she's just a clone with 10% of her power, she said tiredly, but everyone tensed when they heard applause coming from inside the cloud of smoke where they saw what looked like a large bush of blonde hair which slowly became smaller until it revealed the totally unharmed clone of Naruto. Clone N, it was a great practice girls, but it's over, he said and then raised his hand and said, intermittent sound echo, he said and then snapped his fingers and released several intermittent sound waves that caused the girls to faint 1 second later. Now I understand why Orochimaru chose the sound as the default jutsu of his village, he said as he took out a notebook where he began to write down the progress and mistakes of the girls. I wonder how the boss is at this moment, he said to then see how a great torrent of red and black energy devastated a part of the forest before being absorbed by something, but it was not only that, since later a great torrent of electricity followed the same path as the previous attack. It seems that the clone of Rias and Akano are doing well, he said calmly, seeing the evident increase in power in the attacks of the two already mentioned. I wonder how Kiba is doing, he said and then saw a large fire tornado being cut by a wind blade. Her swords seem to be more powerful and durable, but she still needs more training, she said calmly before a small Kurama clone perched on her shoulder. How is Issei going? Clone K, it was difficult to get his training clone to supervise him again after he showed him his new attack, he said, remembering how the almost naked clone hit the pervert, but he managed to get him to supervise him again on the condition that he practiced the technique with mannequins and that Issei would follow all his orders, said the fox, to which the clone of Naruto only agreed with the decision. Clone N, well then, give the information to the original, he said, and the fox clone only dissipated while he waited for his students to wake up. There is still half a day of training left, he said as he began to prepare things for control training. Asia Magician, Rainer and Kalawarner and Kaneko's magic and chakra control training. I hope the boss returns soon to see his progress, he said seriously. Elementary Dimension. We see Naruto and Kaguya, who are sitting inside a renovated and larger Ichiraku ramen which is closed because Ayame Ichiraku closed the place just to talk to his old friend and client number 1. More or less a time Naruto left the meeting room where it was decided that Naruto would take the Bijus and Kaguya with him, but it was clear that the vast majority did not feel comfortable with this decision because the blonde was his friend and the one who left again he just left them quite discouraged, but they decided to support him in that decision and ended the meeting, which gave Naruto time to go visit his old favorite place where he was received by a very happy Ayame who shed some tears. She decided to close the restaurant to be able to talk with Naruto and to know how his life had gone in the other world. And by the way, Naruto also asked about the life of the small family where he discovered that Tucci had died 2 years ago due to a cardiaca leaving the business to his daughter, but she said that he died believing that Naruto would return when necessary and told him that if that happened he would prepare his favorite dish. For that reason we see the blonde eating a steaming plate of ramen while looking at the daughter of the first villager who treated him like a person. Naruto, as always, this is the best ramen in life, he said with a smile as he looked at the young cook who in her hands had a black book with red gems on the spine. Something that catches your attention, Ayame-chan? I ask, a little amused. Ayame, well, it's hard to believe that all this is done based on stamps, she said as she saw a page in which there was an image of Matabi which if you looked at it at first glance seemed like a normal image, but in reality, each line was formed by tiny stamps and the following pages were filled with the history and adventures of the two-tailed Biju before moving on to the image of Isobu, and just like the pictures the letters were made of tiny stamps. I'm amazed that in just a year have this level of understanding of seals. That are all, she said before turning the pages of the book to the middle where there was an illustration of a magic circle surrounded by several thousand seals that form a dragon that surrounds the magic circle, and around it there are small symbols that have a law of the universe. If your study times don't fail you, what is this book for anyway? I ask, a little confused. Naruto, well, have you heard the phrase that says, books have a world inside them? I asked, to which Ayame nodded in agreement. Well, that book right now literally has a world inside it, capable of housing life, he said, leaving in total shock to both Ayame and Kaguya. The seals that make up each Biju image along with their history create an environment designed for each one, he said seriously. For example, the section of the Shukaku story creates a gigantic desert where you can live in peace. You even create animals that belong to that ecosystem, and no, you don't create them out of nowhere. A few hours ago I sent hundreds of clones to capture animals of different species and ecosystems which, thanks to the stamps, were introduced in this book, forming stable ecosystems. where they can live and reproduce. The symbol that is in the center is my personal magic circle. It appears every time I use magic and helps to give more power to the seals since these are chakra and mag seals. Ea and the dragon that surrounds it and has small symbols that represent the laws of the universe represents the power of Zarko which can dominate these laws. That power is the one that gives balance to the world inside the book, he said, finishing his complicated explanation. Kaguya, I can't believe you've created an entire world based only on seals and that rare energy you now possess, said the Otsutsuki, very surprised. If you were so good at sealing, why didn't you use that level of knowledge to seal me yourself, she said, confused. Naruto, because when I met you I had never used the seals in my life, or well, at least not seals that I make there myself, he said seriously. I started practicing this discipline after you banished me from this dimension, he said, looking at her seriously. And in case you were wondering, I don't plan to lock you in this book, he said, and watched as Kaguya sighed. Yame, so this book is a prison to keep the bijus? She said with confusion on her face. I thought you wanted them to be free, she said, looking at Naruto seriously. Naruto, it's not a prison, it's a sanctuary, he said seriously. Unfortunately it doesn't matter what dimension it is, they won't live happily if I let them walk in it. In the dimension I live in now people are very advanced and greedy, and yes, come to the bijus it would be the same as what we live here, he said with a little sadness. For example, look at Zarko, he was a very powerful dragon and for fear of his power he was killed and his spirit sealed in a sacred gear to be used as a weapon, and thanks to my seals I recover his body and is able to get out of the seal even if it is in a reduced size, he said, to which the two women had to agree with him. Kaguya, unfortunately you have a point in favor, Naruto, she said seriously. Human greed, although it is a great driver for their progress, also tends to be their greatest weakness as it guides them to do things that could destroy everything they love most, she said, while for a moment she remembered her decision to take the fruit of the Shinyu. Yame, I certainly agree with what both of them, she said, remembering how it was that many people in this village gained power through deception and extortion, but in the end there is nothing we can do to change humanity and we can only settle for the few. They know it's the right thing to do, she said, then looked at Naruto. Although it's a shame you're leaving, Naruto-kun, she said sadly. Naruto, you know that I do it for the good of all of you and to keep the peace, he said with a small smile, and although it is hard for me to admit it, I no longer belong to this dimension because all those I loved have aged and have put together their lives, and that makes you feel out of place, he said with a bit of melancholy. But he felt how Yame took his hand and looked at him with a small smile which for a moment gave the blonde an idea. Hey Yame, you don't want to, he was about to do his great deal until suddenly the doors were smashed to pieces and a couple of footsteps were heard entering the restaurant. Where are you, damn brat, said a female voice that was heard between angry and happy at the same time, or that was what his empathic ability told Naruto. You don't know how worried you had me, idiot, said, making Naruto smile, which only looked at the figure with a smile. Naruto, it's good to see you again, grandma, he said as he stood up. I'm back, he said, extending his arms. End chapter. Chapter 25, The Return. Naruto, it's good to see you again, grandma, he said as he stood up. I'm back, he said, extending his arms. Naruto waited for a moment for the hug of who he considered a member of his family, but before even thinking about it he was shot against the ceiling, going through it and hitting the ceiling of the second floor, being embedded in it. Kurama, wow, it has rusted, he said with a bit of mockery. Normally you would have gone through the roof and half of the village after one of his blows, he said, and then he saw his container fall through the same hole by the one that entered, falling on one of the tables of the restaurant. Naruto, yes, I noticed, he said in his mind as he stood up as if nothing happened and then looked at the blonde in front of him. I admit I deserved it, but at least I expected a hug first, he said, and then was hugged by the blonde who started to cry on his chest. Tsunade, you're a damn idiot, she said with a broken voice and full of many different emotions. You don't know how worried I was all these years. I thought you had died, and now that you're back you plan to leave again and leave me alone again, she said while his hug became much firmer, keeping Naruto still in place. The young blonde looked at the woman who hugged him sadly. It was true he would leave and she would not have anyone else by her side. It was true that she had Sakura and probably Shizune by her side, but Sakura was quite busy with her work as Hokage and Shizune had probably already started a family, and although he was sure that neither of them would turn their backs on their teacher, they both had more important things to think about right now. In his mind multiple ideas began to form on how to fix this issue and that she stopped suffering, and always ended with the same conclusion. Naruto, sigh, I know it will sound sudden but I want you to come with me, he said, and felt the shudder of the poor blonde woman. I know how much you care about me, and I know that if I go alone you will never be able to rest knowing that maybe I am in danger, so I would like you to come with me, he said, and then looked at Ayame who had a smile. I would also like you to come, Ayame, he said, and surprised the young woman. Yame, wait, she said very confused. I can't leave. What happened to the restaurant? It's my father's legacy and I can't just close from one day to the next, she said, trying to find a reason to stay, but the truth was that she wanted to prove how much he wanted her to accompany him. After all, she has nothing and no one to stay for in the village. Naruto, well, normally I would say that you come with me and then you would not have to go back to work since money is something that I really have left over, but if you want I can open an Ichiraku ramen for you in the other world, he said, and I notice how slowly Tsunade tensed. It seems I already have it in the bag, he thought to himself. We can do whatever we want and I'll be happy as long as you're keeping me company. I can also introduce you to my new friends and go to a great place called Las Vegas. They say it's a city full of casinos and lots of fun, he said with a smile when he felt Tsunade separate from him. Tsunade, do you really think that brat would fall so low? She asked with feigned anger because she knew that Naruto didn't extort her, it was just a joke, so she would stop crying. I'm telling you that I've stopped my gambling addiction and I've already paid my debts many years ago. I even gave them money for Shizune and Kakashi's wedding, he said, surprising Naruto a bit. Yame, that's true. Lady Tsunade has changed a lot in the last 15 years, he said, because she didn't understand Naruto's plan. After that, they started talking to Tsunade about what she had done on her trip after Naruto repaired the roof. Of course, they were talking for a while until someone reminded her that they weren't alone. Kaguya, cough cough, excuse me, she said, calling the attention of the three. Surely your conversation is very important, but Naruto would like to be able to go to the cabin right now. It's almost dark and I want to be ready for tomorrow, she said, and Naruto saw the sunset through the window, realizing how late it was. Naruto, you're right, it's already late. Ayame-chan, think well about my proposal. I'll wait for you tomorrow until noon at the entrance of Konoha, he said, and received a nod from the young woman and then looked at Tsunade. Tsunade, don't even ask, see you tomorrow at the entrance of the village, she said, and then slowly left the restaurant, followed by Naruto, who was pushing Kaguya's wheelchair, and the Bujus, who only walked behind the blonde. Yame, I promise to think about your proposal, Naruto-kun, she said, and then slowly closed the door while she said goodbye. Naruto, well, it's time for you to come back, Kaguya, he said, to then create a clone which stood next to Otsutsuki. I have to go back to the Hokage Tower. Sakura-chan asked me to go before he finished his work for the day, he said, and then Kurama and Zarko came out of the seal standing next to the rabbit goddess. Please take care of her and don't destroy the house, she said before disappearing in a sunshine. Zarko, what do you think the Hokage needs it for? Asked the little dragon. Kurama, I don't know, maybe he just wanted to spend a little more time with his partner, he said, to which his dragon partner agreed, and then they all disappeared in a flash of black. Hokage Tower. -5 minutes later. The young blonde entered the Hokage Tower, noticing that there was hardly anyone, only the presence of some of the Anbu who surely protected the Hokage. Seeing everything clear, Naruto went directly to the office of his ex-partner, and inside he could hear a couple of laughs that he recognized as Sakura and Hinata, which he verified by using his sensor abilities. After knocking a couple of times and receiving confirmation to enter from Hinata, the young shinobi entered and saw a somewhat funny scene because Sakura was lying face down on a piece of furniture and Hinata laughed at her while they were both surrounded by clones of themselves who did a lot of paperwork. Hinata, I warned you not to shoot them so fast, Sakura-chan, said the OG Pearl with a bit of amusement. Sakura, but I want to finish quickly, she said with a pout. I never thought that the arrival of Naruto would put so much work on me even after I literally repaired the entire area in which I fought. Documents arrived about minor damage to some walls and patios of several houses, he said in an irritated and tired voice. Naruto, well, let me lighten your load a bit then, he said, to then create several clones which took one side of the paperwork and began to do it together with the clones of Sakura and Hinata. It seems that being Hokage has been a challenge for you, Sakura-chan said, and to the surprise of the two girls, Naruto didn't even hesitate to start massaging Sakura's back. Hinata, since when is he so assertive with women? Hyuga wondered, quite surprised as she listened to the pleasurable moans of her red-haired friend being treated by the blonde. Tell me, Naruto-kun, who brings you here at this hour? She asked, a little blushed after hearing Sakura give a small moan when her back shook a little. Naruto, Sakura-chan told me to come around this time since he would be finishing his work and wanted to talk to me, she said, and then put a little pressure on her friend's back, causing it to sound quite loud. Hinata, at least now I understand why she wanted to finish so quickly today, she thought with a small smile on her face as she saw Sakura sit down again, but on her face, she saw a very happy and relaxed expression which caused her to tighten her own eyes. shoulders. Wow Sakura, I never thought you would make such sudden plans, she said, a little jealous of her friend's so happy face, until she felt a pair of firm hands on her shoulders and began to feel how the chakra flowed through her body while they gave her a massage. Too good to be real. He let out a small moan of satisfaction. Sakura, normally I would stay until dawn, but I want to take advantage of Naruto's last night in the village and catch up since we couldn't talk much at yesterday's party, she said as she looked with a mocking smile at her friend who, as always, melted at the touch of the blonde Uzumaki. Naruto, then it must be pretty good that you've inherited Tsunade's hideouts, said the blonde as he continued massaging the Hyuga's shoulders. Sakura, you're right, she said while activating a seal on the table from which several bottles of sake came out. Normally I only drink with her or with Hinata, but today I'm an exception with you, she said with a mocking tone as he served 3 glasses and waited for Naruto finished Hinata's massage, which heaved a sigh of satisfaction when Naruto finished, and then the 3 grabbed their glasses by Konoha, she said, to which his companions did the same ovation, and so the 3 began to drink. The 3 friends began their night of drinks where Naruto learned more about what had happened in the last 15 years and was surprised that this Toneri Otsutsuki was still on the moon and maintained communications with the shinobi villages to report possible attacks on the planet, but apparently everyone suspects that he was now dead because they were never informed of the release of Kaguya by Momoshiki or his subsequent attack. He also saw Hinata's new eyes and was certainly impressed that Tenseigan even had a mode similar to his Ashura mode, and not he was able to prevent his competitive side from starting to wonder which of the 2 states was more powerful. Apart from that, Naruto told them in more detail about their new world, and to say that they were impressed with the fact that things like angels and demons existed was little. They were also surprised to learn that the technology of that world was very superior to that of the elemental nations. Naruto also told them a little about what he had done during his time there, although I notice a small flash of anger in them when he told them about the publication of Uchiha Paradise in the demon world. After that, the rest of the night was pleasant and fun, full of laughter and the occasional tear. In the end, the 3 fell asleep on a sofa while they hugged each other without noticing that they were being watched by a small group looking at them from the window. Out of the window. On the other side of the window we see a small group made up of 7 people. These were Hanabi Hyuga, Sume Inuzuka, Hana Inuzuka, Tsunade Senju, Kakashi Hitaki, Iruka Amino, and finally Kato Inuzuka, Hinata's son. Everyone looked sad and nostalgic. In the scene of the 3 friends who were inside the building, the most affected was Kato, who saw his mother with a sad and understanding look. That day his grandmother and his aunts went to see him when he woke up to inform him of what happened with his father and the Inuzuka clan. At first he exploded in anger and swore that he would kill the blonde Uzumaki, but when he was shown evidence of his father's betrayal he had no choice but to shut up and listen to his grandmother and aunt's sermon for the such a horrible way in which he treated his mother. After that they waited for him to be discharged from the hospital, and then they came to the Hokage Tower so that he could ask for forgiveness, but he only found the scene of the 3 drinkings while he counted no important anecdotes or events in her life, and she saw her mother tell them through tears how much she loved him no matter what her father had done or all the times he had insulted her. That's what he did feel like scum. Hanabi, as you can see, Kato, your mother loves you more than her own life, said her aunt with a small smile. That's why she endured so many years by your father's side and trained you with such hardness and care, also that you could defend yourself and nothing bad will happen to you. Sume, the truth is that your mother has suffered like nobody else since the end of the war, she said with melancholy while her grandson looked at her looking for more information because he didn't know many of the things that happened after the war. First she lost her cousin and the man she loved the most in the final battle, then the moon incident occurred where she lost her entire clan leaving only her and your aunt Hanabi, and then she married your father and lived a terrible life by his side, and the only thing well that came out of it was you. Kato, the man she was in love with was the Rokudame, right? Asked the young man as he saw his mother snuggled into the chest of that blonde man with a happy smile that she had only rarely offered him or the Hokage, and he could only see his Aunt Hana nod with a small smile. What am I supposed to do now? He asked, clearly confused by everything that had happened in such a short time. Hana, you only have to support her until the end, and if necessary you must make the right decision when the time comes, she said while taking her nephew by the shoulders, noticing that he was confused with her last comment, so she gave him a smile and told him you'll understand when the time comes. After that little conversation, the Inuzuka said goodbye, but not before Hana asked Iruka if he won't be long in coming home. When they left with the confused young man, those who stayed took a random course and got their own conversation. Tsunade, Kakashi, what happened to my student? She said seriously. She recorded the incident, but Sakura told her that she had completely healed thanks to Byakugo, which was 6 months ago. Kakashi, I don't know the details but I know that the incomplete state of the Byakugo seal doesn't allow her to completely heal the damage that Kiba did to her. He said with a sigh. She is no longer capable of bringing life to this world. He said what caused the Tsunade's shock, which was very worried about Sakura because it was because of her anti-Byakugo serum that Kiba could cause such damage. I don't think she blames you for that, she said, noticing the Senju's thoughts, but this is also the reason why he started Konohamaru's training so soon. Tsunade, if she uses the Byakuya during very extreme times or at full power she could die, she said, realizing the clear weakness of her student at this moment, which means that she needs someone else to take care of the protection of the village, she said, and she saw Kakashi nod in agreement with her. Kakashi, exactly, he said without further ado. Konohamaru recently contacted the Monkey King Enma and managed to pass the test of the summoner. It is supposed that during the next month he will go to the world of the monkeys to train in his arts, and when he returns to take the mantle Hokage. Tsunade, I see, she said with a thoughtful look and then looked at the former Hokage. Tell me Kakashi, if Sakura decided to retire now, would you take her place until Konohamaru came back? She asked as she began to devise a plan in her head. Kakashi, well, if she asks me I wouldn't hesitate to help her, she said without any complaint. After all, she is one of my students. Tsunade, I see, she said, and then looked at the silver-haired man seriously. I have to make some preparations and contact some people. Please meet us tomorrow at noon at the gates of the village and don't be late, she said before leaving for a separate dam without giving Kakashi time to respond. Kakashi, what exactly is Tsunade-sama planning? Asked the man with clear curiosity before looking in another direction. Well, I'll find out tomorrow. After that everyone went their own ways and went to rest with their families. DXD Dimension. While these events occur in the elemental world, in the dimension of the demons, 10 days have passed since the disappearance of Naruto, leaving only 10 more days for the raiding game with the nobility of Razor Phoenix. In these moments we see Rias and Akeno walk in the direction of Naruto's stamp hut with the sole purpose of seeing if Naruto's Detenchi friends have discovered anything about his current state. Akeno, do you really think they tell us something about Naruto? Asked the young brunette, a little skeptical. She knows perfectly well that they are not here because they trust us. Rias, I know Akeno, but they are the only source to get the information we need, she said seriously. Also, I need to talk to Asia and Kaneko. Lately I feel that our connection is weakening, she said, a little worried. Akeno, you know that's not possible because the pieces join us permanently, she said calmly. Rias, I already know that, but that doesn't mean that the bond that unites us doesn't weaken. That's what turns demons into strays, she said with clear concern in her voice. Akeno, well, that's a good point, she said when they finally saw the Naruto seal hut and on a small bench they saw Asia, Rainer, Calawarner, and Kaneko having lunch. Well then, let's finish this. I have to meet with my clone in 30 minutes, she said as she and Rias approached the small group that seemed to be engaged in conversation. Rainer, you should have been there, Asia said the young Detenchi enthusiastically. We managed to hit the Naruto clone clean after she got distracted. Asian, really? I ask a little incredulously. What could be impressive enough to distract the Naruto clone? Calawarner, well, it was also a surprise for us since it was a stroke of luck, she said with a satisfied smile, but the clone praised us for our quick reaction at the right time. Kaneko, they still aren't telling us that it was this event that gave them such an opportunity, she said calmly before eating some of her lunch. The two Detenchi were about to speak when they heard footsteps approaching and saw Rias and Akeno walking towards them with slightly serious looks. Calawarner, Rias, what brings you here during lunchtime? I ask, immediately diverting the subject of their training just in case they heard something important. Rias, well, I came to talk some things with you and discuss some issues with the members of my peerage, she said with clear irritation due to the very obvious distrust that the Detenchi had for anyone other than Naruto, Asia, or Kaneko. Rainer, and what would that be that you want to talk to us about? He asked as he finished his lunch and stood up next to Calawarner. Akeno, we would like to know if they have been successful with the issue of Naruto's disappearance, she said in the calmest and quiet way possible. Calawarner, unfortunately we don't know much, just what his clone tells us from time to time, she said with total seriousness. Rainer, we know that she managed to settle the matter with that woman and now she is preparing some things to return, she said calmly, because this information was not a big deal and there was no point in hiding it. Beyond that we know nothing. Rias, so you don't know when she'll be back? I asked to hope for a positive answer, but the only thing I received was a denial. Rainer, when she can return she will return, she said without further ado. Things are that simple, and until the training returns, it must be followed to the letter if they want to have a chance to win. Calawarner, now if you'll excuse us we must go back to our training, she said and then looked at Asia and Kaneko. See you tonight girls, train hard. After that little discussion, the two Detengchi went to their training area, leaving the four demons of the Gremory clan alone. There was a long silence after the departure of the Detengchi which worried Asia and Kaneko a little. Asia, so bucko, what do you want to talk to us about? I ask as calmly as possible. Rias, well the truth is that I'm a little worried, she said seriously. Lately I feel like the bond that unites them to me is getting a little weaker, she said, and I notice how Asia shivered a little as if she felt pain, and Rias felt a tug on his tie which gave him an idea of what was going on wrong. Asia, are you thinking badly of me? The redhead's comment left everyone in awkward silence. Akeno began to worry and Kaneko only tensed a little. Asia, the truth, Rias, is that I don't trust you, she said, fully changing her attitude to a more trusting one, which worried Rias and Akeno more. I've started thinking about how it is that you got 2 more weeks of training right after the Razor Phoenix was here, and every time I find less sense in it, he said while his eyes narrowed with clear suspicion and a little pain for challenging his king. Akeno, Asia, calm down, she said a little worried. Rias got that time by giving her brother Sirzesh the information about the Naruto incident. Asia, I don't believe it, she said seriously. Your attitude shows the opposite, she said, and then stared at Rias. Just after Razor left, you forbade us any contact with the Naruto clones and even tried to forbid us to talk with Rainer and Kala Warner, he said while enduring a small burst of pain in his chest. What did you do? She asked firmly. Rias, I didn't do anything, I just got that time as a reward for information, she said, but she noticed how Kaneko's ears appeared and they shuddered suddenly. Kaneko, you're lying to us, you laugh, she said with her typical monotonous voice, although one of her eyebrows trembled due to a blow of pain in her chest. Don't ask why our bond becomes weaker if you are not able to show that we can trust you. This comment shocked the redhead and Akeno because Kaneko swore to always trust Rias after they saved her, and now she simply declared that she did not trust her. Asia, I don't know what you did, Rias, but be thankful that Naruto asked us to help you. Just for that I will continue with this, but if I find out that whatever you did affects Naruto or any of my Razor friends, Phoenix will be the least of your problems, said the ex-nun seriously as she turned around and went to her training area. I hope your decision is not the wrong one, because if it is, I would really feel sorry for you, she said before taking a big leap towards the trees as Naruto taught him. Akeno, Asia, wait, she said with concern, but it was too late. Kaneko, you must trust Rias, she has never lied to you before, she said as she looked at the reformed Neko show. Kaneko, I'm sorry Akeno-san, but I can't trust someone who lies to my face, he said while also turning around to continue with his training. From today I'll sleep with Asia and the girls. I won't give you my full trust until telling me what you've really done, he said, and then went jumping through the trees. The whole place was in absolute silence while Rias looked at nothing with wide eyes after having heard Asia's threat and Kaneko's distrust. All of this left her very confused. Were they really willing to endure the pain that violated their bond just for a lie? He did not doubt Asia because she was one of his servants at the request of Naruto, and very special rules had been left on how she should be treated in the nobility, but this type of distrust was never expected from Kaneko. She was one of his most faithful members, and in a second everything had been destroyed. Akeno, I warned you about this, she said looking at her friend seriously. Your decisions have consequences, and this is just the beginning, and it won't stop unless you win that rating game, she said with total seriousness, and then changed to a slightly scared look, because if you lose I don't even want to imagine what Naruto will do to us, he said, and then went to train. Rias was left totally alone while in her mind the words of her queen, her bishop, and her rook were repeated over and over again, to finally remember how the blonde Uzumaki almost killed his nobility without even breaking a sweat, and then made one cry of the strongest demons he knew, that generated a look of terror on his face. Rias, I have to win, she said while looking at the sky with clear concern, or else my life could end worse than with Razor. Elementary dimension. While that happens in the dimension of the devil, in the elemental dimension the sun is rising to illuminate the entire Hokage tower, especially shining directly on the face of our protagonist, who slowly opened his eyes and then stood up gently, trying not to wake up to his two companions. When he was fully upright he stretched, making his spine crack, and for a moment he felt something shake in his back, but he ignored it thinking it was his raincoat until suddenly he felt a strange sensation of sensitivity in his back, forcing him looking back where he saw a fascinated Sakura and Hinata caressing a red fox tail with a white tip. For a moment the three looked at each other and blinked with confused looks until the girls looked at the foxtail again with great curiosity. Naruto, don't you dare, he said seriously, but they totally ignored him and grabbed the tail and caressed it, earning a jump from Naruto, who moved away from them. Don't touch, it's sensitive, he said uncomfortably. Kurama, what the hell is this going on? Asterisk, the blonde shouted with a lot of confusion as he stuck to the wall when he noticed how his friends were slowly approaching him. Kurama, huh? It's just that? I thought it was something more important asterisk, he said as he let out a big yawn asterisk. This Naruto is what happens when you are my Jinchuriki. Of course it was supposed to take longer to manifest, but you decided to consume Momoshiki, so don't blame me. Naruto, you could have at least warned me what would happen, idiot. Asterisk, he shouted when suddenly he saw Sakura and Hinata pass their hands over his head and felt them touch a pair of ears which shook at the touch of the girls. It's a joke, right? I also have ears? Kurama, I told you that you would change a little, although the change may be a little slower, and I don't know if something changed when you ate that Otsutsuki, he said, bored. So fix yourself, he said, and then went to sleep again. Naruto, sometimes I really hate you, he said, and the only thing he gained was a pretty loud snore. By the way, how did we end up like this? He asked when he finally noticed that he was sitting on the sofa again while the girls looked at him with curiosity and a smile, clearly loving how cute Naruto looked in his new look. Sakura, well, suddenly you got lost in your thoughts and we sat you here, he said with a smile while putting all his self-control not to touch the fox ears on the head of his friend. Now could you explain to us what is happening? Naruto, I'm as confused as you are, he said with a sigh. Kurama says that this is happening to me for being his Jinchuriki, something like what happened to Obito and Madara when they became Jinchuriki of the evil Jubi, he said to what his companions attended. Apparently the process was advanced and Kurama does not know what will happen from now on. Hinata, don't worry Naruto-kun, the change looks good on you, he said with a smile. Red is clearly your color and it matches perfectly with your new eyes and those white strands give it its touch, he said while getting a nod from Sakura, who he passed a mirror to Naruto. Naruto took the mirror and looked at himself. His eyes before blue were now an intense purple color like his mother's, his blonde hair was now completely red with some white streaks, and what stood out the most was the pair of red ears with a white interior which moved a little. I also noticed his whiskers a little more marked, which was not much, but I do notice the difference. His fangs were a little bigger but not exaggeratedly, and the pupil of his eyes was torn. Even he admitted that he looked pretty good. He was what the girls would call wild but cute attractiveness, and clearly the look of his companions was enough to prove it. Naruto, well, it's really not that bad, he said, and then agreed, and the ears and tail disappeared. But now I need to get ready to go back, he said seriously, and then stood up. I hope to see you at the entrance, he said, and then disappeared in a flash. Both girls looked at each other for a moment before sighing a little disappointed. Hinata, you know, sometimes I think that life hates me, he said sadly. Since the war all my life I've taken a downward path and don't seem to want to change, and now that the man I really love is finally back, he has to go again and I can't do anything to stop it, he said as his eyes misted with tears. And the worst of all is that he still loves you, he said as he remembered the subtle glances that the Uzumaki gave his friend during the previous night. I know that it sounds selfish, but this is very unfair. Sakura just looked at her friend a little dejected. She herself felt bad for Naruto's departure. It was true that she loved Sasuke unconditionally while she was a girl, but after Naruto went to train from time to time his thoughts went to him. But she knew it would be very hypocritical of her to simply say that she fell in love with him, and she still had her doubts. When he returned she felt happy and relieved to see him back. Many times she tried to get his attention a little, but for her selfish request to bring Sasuke back he simply seemed to accept that she didn't love him in the same way as the Uchiha. Even she herself didn't know what to think of her own emotions. When she declared herself to him in the country of iron, it was his lack of decision that caused the best censor in the world with his ability to feel emotions, even if at that time he was not aware of this ability, to tell him that he hated those who lied to themselves, that if it just planted more doubts in his mind and he didn't know what to do. When the war broke out and he saw Sasuke again in the confrontation against the Jubi, he didn't feel good seeing him, maybe happy that he came to help them, but he realized that his eldest concern was Naruto, not Sasuke. In the end, when Sasuke kissed her, he realized that he no longer loved him but that he wanted Naruto by his side, but it was too late, he was gone. Now that he was back he felt happy but not hard either. He had to go again. Sakura, quiet Hinata, sometimes it's good to be selfish, he said, hugging her. After all, we've been together for a long time and I know that all this is also difficult for you, he said, and then took her cheeks and kissed her. I don't think it's selfish to feel you like that, he said with a smile when he separated from her. After all, I feel the same as you, but I'm also happy about everything we've formed together, he said while he hugged her tightly. She didn't know how things had ended this way. Actually, neither of them knew. It all started like any other day, full of work in the tower, which later turned into a night of drinks that somehow ended with kisses and caresses. Over time, those actions became something normal between them, and almost a year had passed since they decided to make their relationship formal, even if only they knew about it. She still remembered how Hinata got when she discovered what Kiba did to her, and she almost killed him, but she had to stop her for the good of the others involved in the matter. They both loved each other about that. Neither had any doubts, but they also loved the same man, and that somehow made them much more united, and now that this was happening, no one knew really to do. Hinata, don't you regret not telling him how you feel? I asked, clearly knowing about the feelings of her lover. I do it, and I always think about what could have happened, she said while returning the hug. Please don't think badly of, I also love what we have formed, but it is so difficult to forget it, he said as he began to cry. Sakura, shish, don't worry. Everything will be fine. I'm with you and I understand you perfectly. That baka is very difficult to forget, she said while she also began to cry. All was quiet for a while until the door was flung open, revealing the former slug princess. Tsunade, we have to talk, she said seriously. Cabin outside Konoha. Naruto appeared in his room. His face had a somewhat depressing expression because before leaving the tower he could feel the feelings of his two friends. The sadness they felt overwhelmed him for a moment and made him feel dejected for having to leave them behind. For a moment he thought about asking them to come with him, but he didn't know how to do it. Sakura was the leader of the village and she still hadn't talked to Karachi to ask him for help. She didn't even know if she could talk to him before leaving, and Hinata, he had a son. He didn't feel capable of leaving a child without his mother, even if he wanted to take her with him at all costs. He didn't feel capable of doing such a thing. Naruto, sometimes I hate being a censor, he said with a sigh, and then stood up and from a seal took out a black box with the Uzumaki symbol in gold. Well guys, let's finish this before we leave. He said to the tenants of the Zarko, I thought we had already finished it before coming here, said the dragon with confused. Kurama, yes, but Naruto became stronger than last time and now we must synchronize our energy again. He said seriously. Zarko, before you said that Naruto was changing, that doesn't mean that his power will continue to grow as he changes? I ask seriously because at this rate they would never finish this project. Naruto, it's a good point, Zarko, he said as he sat on the bed thinking about how to resolve this issue. I think we should wait for the metamorphosis to finish, he said as he put the box away. Well, I think it's time to prepare everything. The red-haired young man left his room and went down to the first room where he found Kaguya in her wheelchair combing her hair, and around her were the Bijus trying to teach Okami how to generate killing intent, although it was difficult due to the lack of a threat. Really, for a moment Naruto wondered if he would be able to beat Okami in a battle without Kurama's help. Naruto, perhaps when he has more experience, he thought to himself, and then cleared his throat to get everyone's attention. Is everyone ready? He said as he took out the book of Bijus from his coat and opened it on the center page. Gyuki, wow, for a moment I almost didn't recognize you, he said noticing the change in Naruto. It looks good on you, he said, and then looked at his brothers who nodded. I think we're all ready for this, said the little Hachibi. Matabi, I hope it's a nice shelter, he said enthusiastically because he didn't doubt Naruto. Naruto watched as all the little Biju approached the book and Naruto smiled at them, thankful for their trust in him. Naruto, don't worry, you'll have everything you want, he said, and then activated the seal and suddenly 9 magic circles appeared under the Biju. The process took almost 2 hours, but in the end, each one entered the dimension of the book in numerical order. When everyone entered, the book was closed and a chain in the shape of a dragon blocked it. That's all. Kaguya, I thought you said it wasn't a prison, he said, pointing to the chain that kept the book closed. Naruto, it's just a precaution, he said as he opened the book and the chain vanished. Only I can open it because of the dragon's seal, he said, and then closed it once more and let the chain surround him. It's almost time to leave. Kaguya, are you ready? Kaguya, as smart as I can be in my current state, he said with a sigh. It's not like I have many options either. Naruto, hey, don't worry, the past is the past and we have to leave it behind, he said as he grabbed the wheelchair. Okay, we're going, he said, and then disappeared in a black flash while the wooden hut sank into the earth and then a big tree was born on the spot. Konoha entrance, 12 p.m. When Naruto appeared at the door, he was a little surprised to see Ayame standing there with some suitcases. He expected her to come, but I never hoped she was the first to arrive. He also saw his friends and to his surprise Kakashi with the tunic of Hokage. Kakashi, it's good to see you, Naruto, he said as he approached the ex-student. I'm sorry he couldn't contact you before, but he was in the hospital recovering from the battle. Naruto, no problem Kakashi-sensei, everything is fine, he said with a smile, although it is certainly quite rare to see him in that outfit, he said pointing to the tunic and hat. Are you trying to show off, sensei? Kakashi, maybe a little, he said with his typical eye smile. What if you say goodbye to the others while we wait for the Hokage? I heard that the paperwork appeared out of nowhere, he said, earning a laugh from Naruto, and then they both went with their friends. The redhead began to say goodbye to his friends, some of whom cried and others just endured it so as not to look weak before him. That made him smile because he himself was almost about to shed tears. Then he said goodbye to the children and gave them some gifts like seals or some other parchment with Judas. After almost half an hour he saw Sakura, Hinata and Tsunade arriving at 3 with suitcases in their hands, and Sakura was not wearing her Hokage cloak. Along with them came Hinata's son Kato. When they stopped in front of him they looked at him for a moment before sighing and gathering the most courage and then making a request that quite surprised him. Sakura, Naruto, let us go with you, the pink-haired asked with a pleading look on her face. I know it's sudden but we really want to accompany you, he said while staring at him. Naruto, wait a minute, he said seriously, I can't just take them with me. As if nothing had happened he said, and then looked at each one. You are the leader of the village, he said pointing to the pink-haired girl, and you have a son who needs you, said pointing to the Hyuga. Hinata, Sakura already had everything ready for the appointment of Konohamaru as Hokage, so Kakashi will take the position until then, he said with a smile. As for Kato, he said looking at his son, he was the one who convinced me to come, he said with a smile while stroking her son's hair. I know it's sudden but please take us with you. Naruto looked in all directions for a moment thinking about the whole thing. He was actually happy that they wanted to come with him. For Sakura and the position of Hokage he no longer had to worry, but the matter of Hinata's son still bothered him. His look, he focused directly on the boy, giving him a questioning look to confirm his decision. The boy nodded and gave him a take care of her or not even a dimension of distance saves you look. The Uzumaki just smiled at the boy who went with his aunt Hanabi, who received him with a proud smile. Naruto, well then it seems that everything is in order, the redhead said with a smile. Then now we can go, he said while his two companions stood next to Kaguya, Tsunade and Ayame. It was a pleasure to see you all again, he said with a smile, but this time it's a goodbye and not a see you soon. I hope the rest of your lives will be prosperous and full of happiness, he said with a smile, and then went to the entrance of the village. Sakura, take care everyone, and I'm sorry to leave unexpectedly, she said bowing. All order the rest, Kakashi-sensei, she said, and only received a smile and a nod from the man. Thanks for everything, she said, and then went with Naruto to the entrance. Hinata, bye everyone, she said with a beautiful smile on her face. Hanabi, please take care of Kato. I know he will be a great ninja in the future, she said, earning a smile from her son and a nod from her sister who looked like she was about to cry. Shino, thank you for being my friend, and I ask you to help my son as much as you can. He is very important to me. Shino, I'll take care of him with my life if necessary, he said seriously, effectively hiding his desire to cry. I hope you have a good life, Hinata, he said, making a last bow to his ex-partner who smiled and left with Sakura. Tsunade, take care Shizune, and I hope your first daughter has my name, she said as she began to walk towards the entrance so that no one would see her with watery eyes. She hated goodbyes. Kakashi, take care of her, or I'll kill you, she said when she finally got together Naruto, who smiled at everyone present. Naruto, well it's time to go, he said as he activated his Rinnegan and a portal opened in front of them. Well everyone come in, he said as he saw all his companions enter with Kaguya being carried by Sakura, and finally he entered Limbo. The portal opened in the Great Basin. When everyone passed through it they were suspended in the air and saw the terrifying, dark, and desolate place, and its only source of light were some spheres of light that Naruto had created with magic. Yame, this is more terrifying than I expected, she said looking in all directions where everything was an infinite void. Were you really here for more than 10,000 years? Naruto, well not exactly, he said as he floated and turned in the void. Time here is a relative thing unless you have something like the power of Zarko, he said, and then in front of Naruto 3 magic circles with numbers that moved at speeds that appeared different. Green is the elemental nations, red is limbo, and blue is our destiny, the supernatural dimension, he said pointing to each clock. According to this, since we left Konoha 10 days have passed, while here in limbo they have only passed 10 minutes. Tsunade, wow, all this space-time is very confusing, she said as she rubbed her head. What is our next step? Naruto, that would be conditioning them, he said, confusing them all. You will see the supernatural world is located 15 years in the past, and since I cannot force my aging I am going to rejuvenate them. Don't worry, it will only be his body, not his mind, he said when I noticed that they seemed about to complain. Kaguya doesn't need it because she was practically immortal, so her current appearance is between 20 and 25. On the other hand, I would like everyone to be the same age as me, so I'm going to make Tsunade younger up to 25 years old and the rest up to 17, he said said, and without giving them time to complain, a large magic circle in the shape of a clock appeared under them, and then they were all covered by a red and black light that covered them for a few minutes. When the light disappeared, he saw Sakura and Hinata with their adolescent appearance, which made him blush a little more. Tsunade now had the appearance with which he knew her, only that this was true and not a genjutsu, and Ayame looked like the last time they saw each other before the war. They all looked at each other to make sure everything was in order, and then they looked at the red-haired man who just smiled at them. Hinata, I don't know if this power of yours is amazing or terrifying, she said seriously, not really knowing what to say on the matter. Naruto, a bit of both, replied the boy with a foxy smile. Yame, I think it's amazing, she said enthusiastically, and Tsunade agreed. Zarko, we can talk about that later, said the dragon as he came out of the seal, drawing everyone's attention. Now we must find the union that Kaguya made between the dimensions and destroy it so that nothing else can cross from one dimension to another. Kaguya, he's right, the union must be destroyed, and not only because of that, but it could also cause instability between both dimensions and cause some cataclysm, she said seriously. Tsunade, and if you knew this, then why did you do something so reckless? Asked the blonde seriously. Kaguya, it was that or die devoured by that three idiots, she said seriously. Besides, my intervention brought him back, she said, pointing to the red-haired man who kept his gaze fixed on the dimensional clocks. Zarko, that doesn't matter now, he said seriously, we must look for the union as soon as possible. Naruto, we must find it in 3 hours, he said, drawing everyone's attention. 3 hours here are equivalent to 8 days in the paranormal world, and I have some friends who need my help, so let's go find that union quickly, he said, and everyone nodded in agreement. When everyone was ready, Naruto manifested Kurama's avatar, where everyone settled down and went in search of his target. DXD Dimension. 7 days later. The day had finally come. After an arduous training of almost a month, it was time to leave for the long-awaited raiding game in which Rias Gremory's freedom would be decided. Now we see everyone outside the mansion on the mountain waiting for the moment when they are summoned to the place of battle. Rias, well guys, today all this will end. I want you to know that I fully trust you and your training, so give everything you have so we can win, she said calmly, trying to calm the nerves of her nobility. Although I notice how Asia and Kaneko alone, they sighed with a little disappointment and pain. This is not going well. It seems that they are getting used to the damage of the pieces of evil, she thought, a little dejected by the lack of confidence that she herself had generated in the two. For now, prepare, stop everything, she said, and then go to Akeno, who just looked at her seriously. Did you notice it too? Akeno, like 2 of our classmates, don't feel almost any pain anymore thinking badly of you? Yes, I saw it, she said with a bit of sarcasm, making the red-haired girl sigh. I warned you about this several times. You laugh, so pay attention to the consequences of your actions. I will follow you until the end of the world because you are my friend, but in this time I don't agree with your methods, she said, and then went to the mansion because he had to change into a more comfortable outfit, leaving Rias alone, who only started to review her strategy. Everyone went their separate ways to prepare. Kiba went to check her swords and Issei lay down to read her book like a pervert. On the other hand, Asia and Kaneko met with Calawarner and Rainer. Rainer, it seems that here we separate, said the black-haired, if only for the rest of the day. Asia, I thought that Rias had said that they could watch the raiding game from the observation room? Asked the blonde with curiosity. Calawarner, we're not stupid, Asia. I don't plan to get into a closed room with demons, she said seriously, to which both demons agreed. Also, I have a bad feeling, so Rainer and I will go home for now. If you ask to tell her that something important happened. Kaneko, understood, we'll see each other after all this, she said with a small smile. I hope Senpai comes back soon so I can show you how much I've improved, she said with a bit of enthusiasm. Rainer, I'm sure it will come soon, she said while stroking the girl's head. By the way, the Naruto clones asked us to give them these, she said, handing an object holder to each one. They have sealed inside that work with magic and with chakra. Some contain stored attacks that the clones prepared for you. I think there are also some with Rias and Akino's attacks. There are also absorption seals in case any of your opponents use energy attacks or explosions, and they can even return them, he said, and both girls took the slides and hung them on their legs. Calawarner, I advise you to review them to know which ones to choose at the right time, she said, to which the girls gladly accepted the advice. Well then, we're leaving, she said, and then both Detengchi spread their wings to go home and made sure that a clone will seal the seal hut so he won't be left in the mansion at the mercy of the demons. Asia, I don't know why, but now that they left I feel calmer, she said with a strange feeling of relief that she didn't know how to explain. We should check the seals that the clones sent us, she said while she took out the seals and began to review them. Kaneko, I agree, although we should also invent an excuse for the lack of those two, she said while she imitated her blonde partner and began to look at the stamps. Asia, don't worry, I already have the perfect excuse, she said with a small smile, and they just dedicated themselves to preparing everything for the fight. Underworld. In a large palace we can see an office. In this office, there is a red-haired man who seems quite young, wearing a suit which has a very extravagant cape on top. This is Sirzek Lucifer, and at his side is a beautiful dark-haired woman Silver who wears a beautiful black dress. This is Yukino Lucifu, Sirzek's wife. Both saw the woman standing on the other side of the room, who stands with her head down as a sign of respect to the two superior demons. This was Graphia Lucifer, Yukino's sister and servant of the Mao Lucifer's family. Yukine, everything is ready, Graphia? Asked the woman with her professional attitude to show who was the boss. Graphia, yes Yukine-sama, all the preparations for the raiding game have been completed, she said without hesitation, with her typical serious attitude but with her due respect. Sirzek, what about the Detenchi? Asked the red-haired man, although he was clearly not very happy with this conversation. Do you know if he will be watching the combat? Graphia, according to her sister, they will be present to support them from the observation room, she said seriously, but her voice was clearly full of concern. Sirzek, what worries you, Graphia? You are free to give your opinion, said the Mao with a kind voice. Graphia, actually Sirzek-sama, I don't think we should allow the bet of the Detenchi, he said seriously, surprising both leaders. This could mean a war with the Grigori. He expressed his concern, although the image of terrifying red eyes came to his mind. That, and I don't want to face that man's anger, he thought with a little fear. Yukine, they are only two pathetic low-level Detenchi. Graphia, I don't think they even notice that they are needed, he said with seriousness and clear superiority in his voice. Just do your job, he said, managing to make his sister take a step back. Sirzek, enough Yukino, said the man with a dominant voice. Graphia, although I agree with you, we can't do anything anymore, he said, and only saw the woman nod without any objection. That's why you will only be in charge of refereeing the game while Yukino takes the Detenchi, he said seriously, implying that he would not give rise to complaints or objections. Yukine, what happens in the hypothetical case that they are not there? Asked the woman seriously. Sirzek, if that is the case, you will take them the next day when they meet at school, he said seriously, but remember that it is only if you lose, he said, and then made a movement with his right hand, and both women left the room, leaving him just to do his job. I wonder if I'm really doing the right thing, he thought before starting to sign a small stack of papers on his desk. I hope this doesn't blow up in my face. Human World Supernatural Research Club. The members of the Gremory clan appeared in the center of their club building, where they found Graphia and Razor, but Rias was petrified to see Yukine, the wife of his brother, in the group. Yukine, welcome Rias, it's a pleasure to see you again. It seems that the Detenchi didn't come, said, and thought the woman with a jovial attitude that was totally opposite to her business attitude and had a nice smile instead of a look expressionless. I hope you do your best, and I assure you that I am supporting you, she said calmly as she gave Rias's hands a slight squeeze as a sign of support. Note, for those who ask, no, Yukine is not bad or anything like that, she is only very serious when she is in work mode and she takes everything too seriously. Rias sighed, seeing that the woman was not in her working attitude, and smiled back. Rias, it's also good to see you, Yukine. How's everything going with my brother? She asked with a smile as they slowly started a little chat. Issei, who is the beauty with silver hair? Asked the pervert to Akano, who only sighed with irritation upon seeing the smile of the perverted brown-haired man. She has good tits, thought, if that's what you can call thinking, the brown-haired man with perversion. Akano, I advise you not to look at her, she said, looking seriously at the brunette, who stopped smiling instantly. She is Yukino Lucifer, the wife of Mao Lucifer. Saying this, Issei turned pale and his gaze changed directly to a window looking at the sky nocturnal as if it were more interesting than breasts. The conversations between the two women lasted about 10 minutes until apparently, the Razor got tired of waiting. Razor, it's not to be rude Yukine-sama, but it's time for us to start the raiding game, he said, and everyone became serious instantly. Yukine, well young phoenix, let's start then, she said, while his gaze went from a smiling one to a cold and emotionless one which made everyone shudder. Graphia starts. Graphia, as Yukine-sama ordered, she said as she made a magic circle appear under everyone present. The battlefield had been chosen by Yukine-sama. Razor, wait, I'm supposed to choose the field, he said seriously. After I gave Rias time to prepare, he said with a smile as if his argument was really worth something. It's only fair that I will be given this task. Yukine, fair. I don't see anything fair in this, she said seriously. That time you gave Rias to prepare, you could also use it to prepare, and even so Rias continues to have a disadvantage over your group since she has fewer members. He said seriously, you should be thankful that it wasn't Sirzak who chose, because most likely he would have chosen a field that benefits his sister, she said coldly as she looked at the razor with a little disgust. And remember, when you enter the pocket dimension you will have a total 10 minutes to prepare your strategy, then I will start the game. Razor, grr, damn arrogant bitch, maybe I should put her in her place, she thought angrily as she forced a smile on her face. Well anyway, I'm going to finish quickly so Rias can be mine, she said with a smile mocking and depraved. Rias, shut up for once so we can start this, she said seriously, and then everyone was covered by a red light that sent them to their battlefield. Pocket dimension. When the light disappeared, the Gremory group looked around and were surprised to see that they were inside a hollow tree, although in the center there was a table with a map and some chairs. Akano, first I'll take a look at the outskirts to know what kind of place we are in, she said as she came out of the tree and was surprised to see the landscape. It's certainly impressive. The place was full of big trees and rocks everywhere. He could also see some water sources scattered here and there. Image. After seeing the panorama, he quickly returned to the interior of the tree and saw Rias looking at the map in detail to form his strategy. Akano, everything looks like a giant forest, she said seriously. Rias, well, the terrain at our disposal is quite simple actually, he said pointing to the map. Our border is the river, there are 3 bridges by which we can cross to the enemy terrain, and there is also a fortress about 20 kilometers on each side of the river, although there are 2 towers before reaching each fortress, which means that those towers could be a priority objective if their forces manage to cross the river, he said seriously. In a few words, this is expected to be a pitched confrontation to reach the king for each side. The simplest strategy would be to cross the bridge and go straight into battle. Kiba, it would be complex to know its exact location if there are 3 bridges to cross, he said seriously looking at the map. We really don't know anything about the nobility of Riser, and if they get too far apart they could end up surrounding us. Akano, that's true, maybe we should destroy 2 of the bridges, she said with a serious attitude that he only showed in moments of great importance. That would leave them only 1 place to cross and we could use it in our favor. Rias, if I thought the same, maybe we should move to the fortress, she said seriously. It would be safer than this tree, she said, and suddenly Graphia's voice sounded all over the place. Graphia, the planning time is over, he said with a monotone voice. The rules have already been defined. 1. There are no time limits. 2. The team that surrenders or loses its king. 3. The use of familiars is allowed. 4. Any attack that generates an instant death is prohibited. If this rule is broken by either side, it will be given as the immediate loser to the responsible team, she said seriously, especially in the last part. Finally, Yukine-sama advises that don't go too far into the forest. With this clarified, let the raiding game start, he said, and the transmission was cut off. Everyone present began to leave in order to go to the fortress, but Asia stopped them. Asia, wait, I think I have an idea, she said with a smile that reminded them of Naruto. Listen very carefully. Phoenix Territory Fortress. As expected, Razor went straight to the fortress of his territory, claiming that someone like him would never stay in a filthy tree, and when he arrived the first thing he did was start giving his orders while his servants did not say absolutely any. Razor, surely Rias will also head to her fortress thinking that it is safer than the tree, and most likely her plan will be to collapse the 2 bridges on the left and right side, leaving only the central bridge to start a pitched battle and try to defeat us 1 for 1. That's why Mahai, you will go to the tower closest to the fortress. I want you to form a barrier that covers from the tower to the fortress. Revel goes and help her to complete the barrier, he said pointing to a girl with a kimono and a blonde with a dress. Mahai, Revel. Mahai, Revel. Hi Razor-sama, brother, they both said before leaving in the direction of their objective. Razor, Cyrus, I want you in the tower near the central bridge, he said pointing to a dark-haired woman. You will be my first defense in case they somehow manage to reach our territory. Cyrus, hi, she said without further ado before retiring to his position. Razor, look, go and protect Revel and Mahai, she said pointing to a blue-haired girl with a cane. Look, as you order Razor-sama, I will not fail you, she said with devotion and then ran towards her potion. Razor, Lee, you will be Cyrus's support in the tower, she said looking at 2 presumably twin girls with cat ears. Neither Lee. Hi, they said and then left the place. Razor, Burnett, Valent, you will go to the bridges on the left and right, she said seriously. Burnett, Valent, Ubaluna, if you don't mind me asking, master, why do you send them to these places? I thought you said they were going to be destroyed, she said seriously. Ubaluna, Razor, it's just to make sure, he said seriously. Maybe the central bridge is some kind of trap and they are planning to surround us by the other bridges, and I'm pretty sure that Rias's servants are not much so they can for any of the members who try to cross, he said, and then see his two pawns retire. Finally, Karamine, Shui and Isabella, you will stay around the central bridge while Sharia, Kira and Meru go through the bridge. Now all go and don't you dare to fail me, he said so that his last servants would leave the fortress. Karamine, Shui, Isabella, Sharia, Kira, Meru. Ubaluna, Fufufu, let the game begin, she said when she heard Grafia's voice start the match. 20 minutes later. Everything was ready, both sides already had their strategies ready and their defenses prepared. Right now the different pieces of Razor are in their designated positions, but we will focus on the bridges on the left and right side. Imagine that each bridge scene is separate, but I'm going to count them together so as not to waste too much time. Both women arrived at their respective bridges and were surprised to see that both were intact and standing in the middle of a member of the Gremory nobility. The first to speak was the Valente. Valente, Razor-sama, the bridge on the right side is intact, she said through a communication spell. I also see Rias's pawn before me. Burrent, the left bridge is also intact and I see the bishop, she said staring at Asia. Razor, I see then the central bridge must be a trap, she said with an arrogant smile. Sharia, actually Razor-sama, the central bridge is intact and the Gremory tower is in front of us, she said calmly staring at the little girl. Razor, it seems that he has become arrogant, she said with a smile, it's a shame, just finish them off to finish quickly. Hearing his order, all the pawns ran towards their opponents, but that turned out to be their biggest mistake when they saw them smile, and then the three bridges exploded into pieces. All characters must have participated even if it is very small. Grafia, 5 pawns of Razor Phoenix have been removed from the field, said the demon, managing to shock the blonde Gigolo's clan. In the trees near the central bridge we can see Kaneko with a small smirk while she made a manual seal. Kaneko, first phase completed, she said before jumping out of her hiding place. Rias, well it's time for the counterattack, she said seriously. After saying that, Kiba and Issei appeared on each bridge and then, together with Kaneko, jumped the cliff using their wings. When they reached their respective position, they ran towards the forest to try to surround the first tower, but everything was not so easy. With Kiba, the Gremory Knight was running in the direction of his meeting point when suddenly he was forced to avoid a flaming cut that narrowly opened his chest. Looking at his attacker, he saw one of Razor's knights. Karamine, you must be Yuto Kiba, he said as he got into combat potion and his sword caught fire. I hope we have an honorable battle, she said seriously. Kiba, let's see what you're up to, he said while a blue sword appeared in his hand which was covered with a small tornado of water. Get ready because I won't hold back. So they both went on the attack. With Issei, the perverted chestnut was running through the forest at high speed since he used his promotion to knight to be able to get there faster, but suddenly he was stopped by a strong blow to the abdomen that sent him flying into a tree. Shui, I never thought that they could beat the others so quickly, he said while he put himself in a martial arts posture and his hands lit up the flames. All make you pay. Issei, hee, so sexy, with her I can try my new and great technique, he thought with clear perversion. I'm not going to lose, I'm going to save the president. Promotion tower, he said while promoting himself to the bullfight and his gauntlet appeared on her left arm. Hope you're ready to lose. Shui, we'll see, he said before launching himself against the chestnut tree. With Kaneko, the little Neko Sho jumped through the branches of the trees at high speed until suddenly she felt a presence above her. Looking up, she managed to avoid a kick from a brown-haired woman. Isabella, I'm not going to let you advance from this point, she said seriously. Kaneko, you shouldn't get in my way, he said as he put on his gloves and his Neko Sho traits were revealed. Isabella, interesting, let's see what you can do, young tower, she said with a bit of respect in his voice. Without further ado, they both launched into the attack. Gremory Clan Fortress. In the fortress we can see Rias, Asia, and Akano, watching the fights with a magic circle that appears in front of them automatically to be able to see the fights, but it doesn't reveal the location and it doesn't have sound either. Asia, so far everything is going well, said the blonde looking at her teammates about to face their opponents. Akano, I just hope things don't get too out of control, she said as she finished adjusting her priestess outfit. Rias, everything will be fine, I trust them, she said and then looked at Akano for the moment, prepared to go out if necessary, she said, and her friend nodded. You too, Asia, we don't want something to go wrong, also prepare Naru, she said, to which only received a nod from the girl without a word. I hope everything goes well, he thought and then looked at the combats. In the observation area, we see Yukine who has before her a chessboard in which 3 rooks, 2 knights, and a pawn are seen. Yukine, let's see how much they've improved, she said with a small excited smile. End chapter.